Hey guys, happy Wednesday, October 8th. We're talking today about the press release from Railtown that they have completed their acquisition of AI Partnerships Corp. If you bought in the lows in this ticker in May of 2025, you are up this morning about 165%. Congratulations. Even if you bought at the recent lows at the end of September, you're up almost 50% on today's news. Again, a great trade. And I think there is potentially more upside here, and we're not done hearing all the news out of Railtown. So let's talk about this press release, what we know about today, and how did the news out of Railtown compare to what we were guessing. Back in February 2025, Railtown announced a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, that they intended to acquire AI Partnerships, another Canadian AI company, a private company, and that at some point after that, a letter of intent and more deal details would become available. And a lot of time went by. We never got the letter of intent. They just went straight today to signing the deal. The deal is done. Railtown announcing this morning that they have executed an amalgamation agreement with AI Partnerships. For all intents and purposes, this deal is done. Some of y'all are wondering, what is an amalgamation? It's just a Canadian word. In the US, we would call it a merger or a combination of entities. Don't get too hung up on the word. Railtown acquired AI Partnership. And we got a little bit of extra news today that they have a new MOU with Digital, and we'll talk about that, as well as the specifics of this deal. What did it take for Railtown to acquire AIP? How many shares were required? It is a little bit dilutive to Railtown shareholders, as I have been talking to you guys about, but far less dilutive than we were speculating. We had very little information to go off of. We had to guess what could the revenue potentially be of AI Partnerships, and how do you get a deal done like that? So let's spend just a couple minutes breaking down this press release and thinking about what is next for Railtown AI. Through a three-cornered amalgamation, AIP will become a wholly owned subsidiary of Railtown, and the crux of the deal is this, the two bullet points here: 50 million shares, 40 million at a price of 50 cents per share, restricted to be released over 18 or 36 months, and an additional 10 million shares, also at a deemed price of 50 cents per share, to be issued and put into escrow to be released upon some recurring revenue milestones that we'll talk about down below. I know you guys are mostly interested in how high could the price of Railtown go, but before we start dreaming or speculating about that, and I know people are already doing it, before we start dreaming or speculating about that, I think it's important to understand the way this deal is structured and the valuations that this press release tell us. And then we think next about what other press releases are coming and what is the next year or two of business and revenue going to look like for Railtown. Then we can start thinking about future valuations and what could this company be worth in the future. I do also want to talk with you guys in this video about the new information in today's press release, the digital partnership, a new MOU. But before we get into that, let's just at a very high level make sure we understand the transaction details with AIP. What exactly are these 50 million shares buying us? And the first bucket is the 10 million consideration shares. The 1 million indemnity shares is just some shares that are held in escrow in case Railtown were to find out anything that did not come up during the due diligence process of investigating the acquisition of AIP, and they could be canceled by Railtown if they were to find some adverse information. We don't expect that to happen, but that is the purpose of the indemnity shares, to allow Railtown to pull some of the purchase back if they were to find out some new information. If we put aside the indemnity shares, 1 million, and just think of this total bucket of 10 million consideration shares or escrow shares, this is what we talked about over the past couple months could potentially be in this deal, which is what we call an earnout. Of those 10 million shares, half of them will be held for up to 36 months, depending on when this first milestone is hit. And that milestone is that annual recurring revenue from AIP affiliates must equal or be greater than $1 million. When that target is met, then half of those 10 million shares would be eligible for release. The remaining 50% of the escrow shares could be eligible for release if a second milestone is hit in 36 months, and that milestone being that the recurring revenue meet or exceed $2 million. If for whatever reason those revenue targets, those earnouts are not met, then that 10 million share portion of the deal is canceled, and Railtown does not have to pay those shares to AIP. I think the final thing regarding these escrow shares that it is important to note is the protective lockout period for Railtown and Railtown shareholders. And that is, even if these milestones are hit early, no escrow shares will be released earlier than 18 months from the effective date of this contract. The remaining 40 million consideration shares, as best as I can read this document, and feel free to correct me if I got something wrong, the remaining 40 million are also subject to certain lockup periods as detailed here in pink and in blue, and released over a 18 or 36 month period. And those shares are released on quarterly installments as detailed here in these two highlighted paragraphs. Not meaning to scare anybody, but just to make sure I'm doing a thorough job of covering what is in the press release. It does say that there can be no assurance that the transaction will be completed as proposed or at all. Completion in green here at the bottom, it says completion of the transaction is subject to a number of conditions, including but not limited to receipt of required shareholder approval by AIP. But then also at the top, it says that they have voting support agreements already from over 51% of outstanding shares of AIP shareholders. I would expect this deal to go through. I have no reason to believe that it won't, but just a little safety check and making sure that I'm dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's here. I did want to highlight this paragraph to you guys. What do we like here? And how did this compare to the speculating we did about how a deal like this might go down? What I like is that it is only 50 million shares of Railtown, which is substantially less than what I had dreamed about in my speculation slides with you guys. But I also didn't know what the revenue or valuation of AIP was. So we were only left to guess. And I had the valuation of AIP much higher than what it appears to be. We got 50 million shares at 50 cents each from Railtown. So they're valuing this acquisition at about $25 million. And I was using numbers for AIP much higher than that. You can see on the top line of the slide I showed you guys several months ago that we had been guessing maybe the valuation would be $200 million. It wasn't even close to $200 million. So the total shares, I was saying, in that case could be as high as 254 million. We have $25 million valuation, 50 million shares. You know, if the valuation would have been higher, the number of shares that were required to get the deal done would have been higher. But that's not the case. We have 50 million shares, 50 cents each, 25 million valuation. No matter how you cut it, even if my numbers were correct, we're at the low end of this scale. And, I think this is a reasonable valuation for AIP based on what we know, based on the earnout targets. And it is good to see that there are appropriate lockup periods for these shares. So it is not immediate dilution for any Railtown shareholder, although it is going to be some dilution going forward, and we will keep track of that on a quarterly basis. And more importantly, we'll need to be keeping our eyes peeled for what sort of revenue numbers are reported from this new entity going forward. The other exciting piece of this press release, new information for all of us, is that following the completion of this transaction, there will be a MOU, a partnership between AIP and Digital, and I will put a link to Digital down in the video description, and we'll talk about that more in the coming days and weeks, but you might want to go read up on it yourself. You could think of Digital as a collaboration, a consortium, if you will, that is funded by the Canadian government to promote the AI industry. You will also hear it referred to as Digital Supercluster, and I will have a link to this website down in the video description as well for those of you that want to get ahead on doing your homework. Key aspects of this new partnership include the 3 bullet items that we have listed here from Railtown and AIP. bi-directional referrals connecting digital members with AIP affiliates and vice versa to enhance collaboration, joint initiatives, and ecosystem engagement. It is all about bringing people together to move this partnership, these entities, the AI industry in Canada forward. Serena Nguyen, the Chief Development Officer over at Digital, says that the collaboration between AIP and Railtown unlocks an exciting combination of networks and AI infrastructure, and this is how we unlock Canada's AI commercialization potential and lead on the global stage. Closing out today's coverage of the Railtown AIP press release, I wanted to highlight a comment from each of the CEOs of Railtown and AIP, and we're going to start with Corey Brandolini, the CEO of Railtown. He says that, "I believe the acquisition of AIP will amplify Railtown's ability to connect Canadian AI innovators with secure, sovereign compute infrastructure, driving scalable growth." And moving on finally to the comments from Dr. Tom Core, the CEO of AIP. He says that the combination of these two entities will leverage the Railtown application development and agentic product offerings by AIP's affiliate network and their end users, while at the same time growing the AIP affiliate network and the AI product marketplace. I know you guys are given a lot of information on social media, price targets, a lot of speculation about what could happen. I don't do that here on this channel. I've been bullish about these two management teams once I got to know and understand them and the products and the potential here. The stock is trading well up, depending on when you bought in, and I think that there is potential upside, and we look forward to seeing what other news Railtown has to share with investors as things develop. So keep your eyes peeled. Follow Railtown on LinkedIn or on their website or on their investor relations page to make sure you don't miss out on any future news updates. And let's keep an eye on how things go with this partnership and what kind of revenue they achieve here in the coming months and quarters. In terms of valuation, you know, the market price right now, it's up about 2% today, trading between 59 cents and a high today of 62 cents. I think that the market is very efficient at valuing things based on the news that it has. So be careful when you're listening to price targets that other people might be giving you. Just understand that is speculation, and it's fine to speculate. It's speculation based on other news or certain revenue targets that haven't been officially announced by the company yet. You can see what the earnout revenue targets are, 1 million and 2 million. I think both teams here between Railtown and AIP believe that those are reasonable revenue targets. So you can start thinking about what valuation could we assign to this entity based on these sort of revenues. And then we also got to think that the market in general, despite what is going on with revenues, often does sometimes assign very high valuations to companies. So I'm not going to come down too hard on anybody for giving you guys price targets. It's literally anybody's guess, and the market will figure it out. The market is efficient. Believe the market, listen to the company. As far as social media, take all of that with a grain of salt. Make good decisions, manage your risk. If you have any comments or questions, let me know down below. I'm Tony Denaro. Thank you for watching. And as new developments come, stay tuned to this channel for ongoing coverage of Railtown.